This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, my name is Novo Manna, and we are here at the Technology Review Council. This is an inaugural session. We have partnered with the IHRIM organization. We're very, very pleased to have them all joining us as we go through the meeting here. And our existing TRC Council, the Technology Review Council, is joining as well. So we're going to have a nice crowd. We're very, very pleased to have CapsimInbox, Matt and Brendan and Kelsey, to present to us a very, very interesting product. And we'll go through the process. Just a little bit of housekeeping here, that if I again ask you to please keep your speakers on mute, so that we don't pick up any background noise, because we are recording. And secondly, I'm going to be watching the chat box, so if you've got any questions, please just pose them in there. I may choose to open up the mic and ask you to pose your question, or I'll just pose it off to Matt. Matt, if you don't mind going to the next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
So just quickly to say again, thank you for all of you joining. This partnership with IHRIM is going to be quite exciting for, I think, both parties. We're going to see many new vendors coming in through the Technology Review Council connections and those with IHRIM. So I think we're going to see a lot of new stuff coming through. So again, I'm very excited about the partnership. Next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
So the quick benefits of that for those of you in the Technology Review Council, the VI, we call ourselves the very important professionals, that you're going to see some very nice products. There are going to be some phenomenally new perspectives we're going to bring to the table. We are going to be opening up the idea of the different vendors we're going to see to a couple other new parameters, thanks to IHRIM's connections. And for the vendors, if any of them, if those of you in the audience are seeing different vendors, are using other vendors, please let me know. We would love to bring them to this table in this venue, because I think people have gone through the process, as CapsimInbox will do today, for some great exposure and some really good insights on how their product is being received. Next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
And one last one for those of us in the IHRIP educational certification, we are giving now a 1 recertification credit for each of our TRC sessions. So for those of you who are IHRIP like myself, that's a great benefit. If you're not familiar with what IHRIP is all about, I would urge you to please go out to ihrim.org, or call me or Kevin or any one of the people here in this audience and pose the question. You'll find that the organization has got a tremendous history, a lot of benefits for the HR technology arena, and we have that certification program. I think that's about it. And Matt, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Nov. Appreciate the introduction, and thank you all for joining us during today's Technology Review Council session, where my colleague Brendan and I will be debuting the CapsimInbox authoring platform, a web-based authoring tool that will allow your companies to create custom micro simulations via a simulated email inbox that will essentially let you be able to assess and measure the key skills or competencies that you'd like to assess within your internal workforce, or potentially for use with your clients as well. Now, my name is Matthew Schell. I'm Capsim's Market Development Manager, and I work directly with all of our corporate as well as our academic authors with creating these custom micro simulations on the platform. Now, I'm also joined today with my colleague and Capsim's Director of Product Design and Development, Brendan Langen. Brendan?
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to get to introduce CapsimInbox and the authoring platform that we've built with all of you. As Matt mentioned, I lead the product design and development team, which means what you're seeing is the creation that we've brought forth. Can't wait to show you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that, Brendan. What we thought we'd start out with is, over the next 20 to 25 minutes, we'd like to hit on the following topics within our agenda for today's presentation. First off, we'd like to give a very brief history about us here at Capsim and a little bit about our history with corporate training programs. And then from there, we're going to go into a very high level 30,000 foot view of what really is the CapsimInbox authoring platform and what does it seek to achieve. From there, we'll actually show you what an output of the platform looks like, a CapsimInbox micro simulation, which would be actually delivered to the participants. And then from there, we're going to go into an in-depth demonstration where we're going to show you a use case of how this tool was used internally here at Capsim in the hiring and selection process. and then also take you behind the scenes to show you all of some of the key functionality and just how easy it is for anyone, not just those with extensive instructional design backgrounds, but even managers to be able to jump in, create a high fidelity experiential learning tool with this platform. And then we'll close out by talking very briefly on some additional use cases and be able to provide you with demo access to any of the ready to use versions we currently have. And then we want to leave as much time as possible towards the end for questions. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So first and foremost, just to tell you very briefly about us here at Capsim. We have been in the simulation industry for well over 35 years at this point. In fact, we started back in 1985 creating custom simulations for many corporations out there. And it's something we do all the way to today. And this can include anything from more kind of group-based, traditional professional development programs where we're either on site for 1 to 3 days, or maybe we're doing virtual programs, and more recently due to COVID. And in these different types of professional development trainings, we're doing everything from helping identify high potential employees to teaching about strategy and business acumen to even executive education as well. And just recently, the last 3 or 4 years or so, we've really tried to start putting an emphasis on helping firms with creating custom micro simulations. So that way, in addition to being able to offer these kind of on-site, more personal programs, we can also provide more self-directed and individualized skill assessment tools that look directly at things like soft skills, for example. And you'll see on the right there just a few of the clients that we've worked with in the past for that exact goal. But what we'd like to do to kick things off is right before we get into the inbox simulation itself, is I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Brendan that's going to take you through a practical example of how this platform can be used. And it's probably going to be a simulation that many of you can relate to. So with that, I'll hand it off to Brendan. Brendan?
Thank you, Matt. We like to think of Inbox as putting you in the shoes of whatever role that you were trying to simulate. And as a manager, both Matt and I manage people within Capsim, and I'm sure many of you manage personnel in your own roles. This is a scenario we wanted to share with you and dive in and see what would you do. So imagine receiving this email from one of your direct reports, and I'll summarize but give you the high levels. This employee has won the Service Excellence Award, and it meant a ton to them. They've worked at the company for the past year, and it's been incredibly exciting. Now, this positive feedback about the performance in their last one-on-one meeting meant that there could be more responsibility that the employee takes on. This is perfectly sensible. In fact, there was an opportunity from Sanjay that said, we might have a chance to present to a fictional company, in this case, Circa Tech, about our newest offerings. What a great chance to expand our business to such a large and distinguished client, this employee is thinking. So while this person has never done presentations for a client this large yet, they'd love the chance to tackle the challenge. And as I mentioned, this is a situation that we're kind of always in. You have a high performing employee, someone who's doing something really well, and there's a new opportunity at hand. What do you do? So let's dive through this, and I want a little audience interaction here. There's 4 options. First, let them know this is too big of an opportunity to use someone without more work experience. You could tell the person they can sit in on the team meetings to gain exposure. You can allow the person to attend the presentation in order to learn the ropes, or you could have them create a sample presentation to give to the team for feedback. So just by a show of hands, let's go through this, and let's go through this one by one. Who would select option 1?
Or actually, what we could do as well, we could always do, if you'd like to put a number into the chat, 1 through 4, we could take it that way as well.
In fact, that'll probably be easiest based on the hand raising.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that
Please
makes
put your
a lot.
number into the chat.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, I love seeing some differences.
And a variety
Fantastic.
of responses, nice.
A lot of people are nicer than I am.
All right, all right. So we've got, I'd say, the majority of people selecting option 4. We've got a few 3s. We've got a 2 in there as well. Now, Capsim Inbox looks at each situation as a kind of a, you can think of it as a good, better, best. We know that there's always responses that are pretty good. On the surface, they get the job done. They are helping grow the business, grow the employee. But there can always be a best answer. And in this case, the best answer is actually number 4. So everyone who chose number 4, give yourself a pat on the back. That's bravo. Now, it doesn't mean that options 3 or 2 are less good, less important to do, but option 4 is actually the best possible situation because this allows the employee to A, put their insights and knowledge on display, B, get something out to the team to then build atop and critique, and C, give them an opportunity to actually put themselves in front of the client. Now, this isn't saying you're in charge of this meeting, you are going to be running this, but it does allow for them to bring their insights to life. Now, bravo, Kevin. I'm also with you. That's a happy moment. Now, each email, this would be a sample email that you would run into with CapsimInbox. Each email has been created by experts in the field. In fact, this one was from an industrial organizational psychologist who's done a lot of his research in the realm of enabling employees in the workplace. Indeed, Oral, that's exactly what this is. This is great initiative, and it actually ties back to the specific skill of initiative in our worlds. So we know that one of the most common soft behavioral skills that are missing from recent graduates, according to NACE and a number of other populations, is initiative. So how might we measure that? And within each CapsimInbox that's created, we actually have an expert that creates this, and then it goes out to a panel of subject matter experts who review and provide commentary for validity. And that's a full kind of coming full circle on this very practical scenario. So, Matt, I'll turn it back over to you. We wanted to tee this up for you up front so that you could see what is a day in the life like of a
Yep,
manager.
absolutely. And thank you for that description, Brendan. As you noted, great practical example, very tame example. And this is just one kind of idea of how you can use this platform to create a variety of different situations where you can have participants kind of demonstrate their situational judgment capabilities, honestly. We see some of these done on everything from day-to-day issues or say, like a day in the life where, it's kind of their roles and responsibilities of their given position, or maybe even managing crises, for example. But as Brendan mentioned, a lot of our initial versions we created with this platform were done with the help of industrial organizational psychologists. But really what we wanted to do is we wanted to bring this capability of creating custom micro simulations to all of you. And what I'd like to do now is kind of give you that 30,000 foot view as to what exactly is the CapsimInbox authoring platform. So first and foremost, this is an entirely web-based software as a service style solution. Works on all of the major browsers out there. And what you'll be able to do is just simply log in with your credentials and immediately get starting with writing. So even right after today's presentation, if you'd like to explore this platform, we're going to be able to give you access to do that. And of course, if you'd like to try any of our ready-to-use versions, we can do that as well. Now, one of the big things that we wanted to make sure we achieved with the CapsimInbox authoring platform is that we wanted to make it as intuitive and as user-friendly as possible. Again, we wanted to make sure we had a tool that would work for those that are very seasoned instructional designers, but also for those that may be fairly limited in their time creating this kind of content. So we wanted to make sure we had hit both sides of that spectrum. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that whenever we created this tool, that we kept the administrative burden very low. We wanted to make sure that it was easy to implement and that you could do it fairly quickly and efficiently to make the best use of your time. Now, what's also great about this in the micro simulation format is that you're going to be able to look at not just cohort level data, not just group-based data that a lot of simulations can provide, but also taking it a step down further, really getting more granular and looking at the individual results to see where are they at in terms of their skills, and can we effectively not only identify their self-awareness levels to see if their perceived skills match reality, but also to make sure, do we have any skill gaps that are in most need for improvement? That's what really our goal is for this, for any assessment that comes out of the authoring platform. But what's also great is that there are absolutely no developmental fees whatsoever or access fees for you to go onto this platform if you're the one that's creating it start to finish. The only fee that's associated with this tool is a $5 end user fee for anybody that goes through your solution at the endpoint. There are also options that we'll cover at the latter half of the call where you could work directly with us in more of a partnership. And again, we have those ready to use options if you want to just try something out first to see how implementation works. But when we created this program, what did we really think about to create it in terms of like the methodology? Well, what we did was we worked with those same IO psychologists. And what we try to do is really try to nail down what are the main components or the 4 pillars, if you will, of having an effective e-learning tool. And not just the authoring platform itself, but any output of said platform. And what we were able to find was that number one, we wanted to make sure that anybody using this tool can create an immersive experience. Because one of the things commonly referenced in research and a lot from the input we get from corporations is that increasing engagement among participants is paramount. And with a simulation, it lends itself to that incredibly well because it creates that high fidelity and experiential learning approach right off of the bat. Secondly, we want to make sure that we had a very minimal learning curve. And I have just participants here, but that goes for the authors of their simulations as well. And in fact, that's the reason why we picked for this platform to go with a simulated email inbox, because instantly that provides great practicality and relatability since virtually all of us use emails in our daily correspondence. So it's instantly familiar to anybody going through the experience, and it doesn't take that much of a learning curve. Now, thirdly, we want to make sure that anything you create on this platform is fully customizable top to bottom. Do you want to measure skills like problem solving or initiative? Yes, you can. Do you also want to measure hard skill areas like can someone interpret a financial statement, for instance? Yes, you can as well. And what's great about it is it allows you to really kind of hone in on measuring the key skills and competencies that are not just relative to your institution, but to say your industry at large. And then finally, of the 4 pillars, we wanted to make sure that we're providing an affordable solution that has endless scalability. And really where the affordability comes in is, I'm sure you all have that kind of notion where if you're thinking custom simulation, your mind may ultimately go to, well, this is going to take a long time to develop and it's going to have a high price tag attached to it. We wanted to dispel that notion entirely with the Inbox authoring platform by making it as self-directed and easy to implement as possible. So that way, this is a platform that can grow with you, whether you're putting 5 participants through it or 5,000, basically. But now what we'll do from here is I'd love to show you all an output of the CapsimInbox authoring platform, what we refer to as a CapsimInbox micro simulation, by demonstrating the user interface. So what you're seeing on screen now is the participant experience, exactly what the participant would see upon going through the onboarding process and going into the simulation. And as you all can see, it's very familiar to the Outlooks and Gmails that we use on a day-to-day basis, and with a little bit more of a minimalist tone to it as well. And just to kind of briefly kind of hit on some of the topics Brendan was mentioning, holistically, what are we trying to look at here? We're trying to put participants in a fictional role at a fictional company to experience the day in a life of the person in that simulation. A great way to conceptualize the CapsimInbox experience is like a digital choose your own adventure, where essentially based on your responses, based on your replies to certain emails, you're going to see the consequences of your actions in real time, albeit positive or negative. And you could have more of a linear storyline that where there's little course corrections to have learning during the micro sim, or you could take more of a live case study approach and have it where participant A and B could end up entirely different outcomes based on the way they respond to these emails. And very briefly, I'd like to just take you through some key functionality here on this slide, starting with the ability to have it as a timed experience at the top of the screen, where you can have it be 60 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you like, or remove it entirely. If you look at the left side of the screen, you'll see that all of the email stimuli that the participants will be responding to will be, of course, in their inbox. And they can, of course, review any previous responses in the sent items folder. We also have a company drive, which could have any sort of documentations, videos, multimedia files that participants may need to look at and research to make a well-informed decision on one of the given emails or instant messages. And then finally, let's talk a little bit about how they actually respond. So one of our most common methods is through the use of multiple choice responses. However, it's not exactly just a binary correct or incorrect. As Brendan mentioned earlier, there's going to be a variety of different ways to effectively handle the situation, but are you choosing the most effective of the choices allotted to you? In addition to that, we also have multi-answer responses. Say, I'd like to get your opinion on 3 of the 5 initiatives and let me know which ones you think would be best. But by far, one of our most popular ones is that we do indeed have the ability to have written responses in this experience. And to demonstrate very briefly how that would work, say a participant maybe goes through 2 or 3 emails, they're doing a bit of investigation of a key issue, and then let's say they make a managerial decision. What we can do then is prompt an email threaded from that previous email from their supervisor, their fictional supervisor, of course, that says, hey, I understand you made this decision on this key issue. I would love to know your rationale behind making that decision. And sometimes this can catch participants a bit off guard because they're like, oh, I just thought this was multiple choice. No, I'd love to hear your decision-making process. I'd like to see what was your thought process for coming to that determination. And what's fantastic about this is that facilitators as well as administrators can evaluate those written responses entirely separate from the empirical multiple choice section of the experience. And to give you an idea on the scope, like in the overall length, a lot of the experiences that we've made where we allot 60 minutes for, we see an average completion time of around 30 to 45 minutes with roughly 20 to 30 emails having to be responded to during that time. So with that, that's a great 30,000 foot view of the participant side in the microsim itself. What I'd love to do now is I'd like to hand it over to Brendan, who's going to take us through a use case on how this was used at hiring here at Capsim, and then he'll show you kind of the behind the scenes of the platform itself. Brendan?
Perfect. Thank you. And as I share my screen, you're going to see a little bit of the behind the scenes. It's always my favorite part. So this should be updating for you now. Matt, if you can give me a signal when you actually see the interface. It says it's sharing now. Do you see anything?
Not yet.
All right, let me try that one more time. GoToMeeting, always just a touch different than the other applications. Let's see.
We might have the GoToMeeting people coming in for the developers to be tested next.
I see the same. Tells me that I am screen sharing on my side. Unfortunately, it's looking like that's not appearing. Matt, is there any way you could pull this up on your screen? I'm sorry to throw that your way.
Absolutely. We can take care of that. No problem. Just one second here. In the meantime, Brendan, we do have a question in the chat about the experts pool. Would you mind speaking to that in the meantime?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Nova, I saw you ask that question. Our experts pool is quite diverse. For context, Capsim's kind of foundations were in corporate training, corporate learning and development in the mid 80s. That's where we got our start. So, Fortune 500s, subject matter experts from those companies that actually offer their support in review. And for the past, I'd say 20, 25 years, we've been heavily embedded in the academic university community. This allows us for a number of researchers and people who are looking to constantly review and push forward the frontiers of what is happening on the educational technology side. So it's a panel that we call on, and depending on the topic at hand, that's where we really go and talk more depending on their background. So, so much for flexing over on what happened on this side. What I'll show you is a little bit of that output on the Capsim inbox side. And in each case, the inbox will start with a blank slate. You'll get introduced to the situation at hand by low. And as Matt talked about, the use case that really came to life here was something that we used ourselves. We used CapsimInbox in a variety of roles. And what we're looking at here is how we actually brought on a new we created an inbox that resembled a day in the life of a learning experience coordinator. And if you were here at the beginning of the call, you might recognize that Kelsey, who's on the call, was the one who went through this version altogether. What we try to do in any case with a Capsim inbox when we use it ourselves is how will our customers use the product? In our case, we wanted to make sure that we were selecting the right person for the role. So when we actually take a look at this, the scene is set, and I want to take you through a sample chain of events as seen here. And Matt, if you can click on Ethan Morrison's email, this is our director of marketing. It's actually a fictional character, I should say. What this goes into right here is actually asking the person at hand, who in this case was any applicant to the role, how they would go about looking at new markets to explore. So we have a few responses that kind of baked in here. That last one shows some real excitement, I guess so. Let's select that one. I don't know if Kelsey was actually that bored by responding, but the selection of any response will actually trigger a new email that is responded to. So in this case, Ethan's responding. And what we're going to show here is a little bit of how you can use outside external resources, whether this is video, URL, or any research that's done in the real world, to tie back in. And in this email, it asks you to look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics to find, well, what is the job cluster, the career cluster that seems to be growing the fastest? Is it marketing, health science, education and training, or hospitality and tourism? And in this case, you can actually go to bls.gov, take a look at career clusters, and find out what the best answer is. Now, admittedly, I know this answer, and I know Kelsey knows this answer. So we're going to skip ahead through it. And Matt, let's actually choose something that's incorrect. Let's choose hospitality and tourism.
Okay.
Now, what happens when someone gets an incorrect response is one of two things. You can continue the storyline on as it would go, and there's a little bit of back in from Logan to ask, what approach should you
Yep.
take? The
I think
actual correct answer is hospitality and tourism, around the health sciences. So in this case, Logan is asking the candidate why they chose that. You know, what went into their thought process, and this is really where we can see how a candidate thinks. When we are working in a selection environment, it's not just that we're looking for criterion validity, but I want to see how do they react in moments of situations that might resemble this job. And this specific version of CapsimInbox has 3 to 5 instances of the role itself that Matt and Kelsey go through on a day-to-day. So getting the inside picture of how this work was done is really helpful to start thinking about. And one cool thing, if we just kind of peel back the curtain and show you how this is created, Matt's been talking about access to this inbox filtering platform. And what you're seeing here is just that. This is the creation platform that any interested designer or author can use to actually create their own version. So see that third email down, Ethan Morrison, if we click on it, we can actually see the exact text that we saw as our first email that we faced. And there's an interesting thing here. I'm going to put you on the spot because I was going with myself. But if you hit edit, I want to actually show how we can branch off a new email in this situation. And so when we start looking at how we can improve an experience, we often want to create a dynamic experience. So, you know, if we had, I guess so, that response that we actually selected, if you click into that, we can actually add a new trigger. So what this will do is actually create something brand new that will happen should this be selected. So in this case, let's actually click on add trigger, and we're going to add a new IM that's going to come from Matt himself. And Matt, knowing you from working with you from the last several years, I would know that this type of response would be something that you would say, are you really that excited about this? This would be an example of how we can provide feedback in real time. And I saw a question actually come in on created, and we'll get into that very specifically. But on the high level, we often look at what are the common situations that we see on a day-to-day basis. In Matt's case, mentioned he works with a lot of different authors, people who want to create inboxes like this. Um, Part of his work is also finding new opportunities for us to grow the inbox authoring platform. So, with the health sciences market growing and booming, we want to make sure that we're actually putting the right people towards that. And if we do one thing here, I think this will be kind of a cool thing to round out the experience. If you hit that preview experience button in the top right corner, you'll notice this is almost just like we're in PowerPoint and we've hit play slideshow because this will play out the actual series of events that we just edited in real time. Now, this is that intro email from Logan again. And we had a time delay on that initial email that's coming in right now, about 15 seconds. So let's go for this and try to respond in that same way, I guess so, and see what happens in this instance.
Mhm.
So now on top of a new email being generated, the same email that we saw before, we'll also get this IM in real time. Now, this is just to display how simple it is to actually edit on the fly. Matt, how long did it take you to create this version as a baseline to begin with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say it probably only took me about 5 hours total from this. And actually, a little bit later on, I'll be able to kind of tell you my methodology for that. But I would say 5 hours overall.
And coming back to the question in the chat, this really comes from those moments in our everyday. So the way that we work directly with any author, and this is a support service that we provide up front, is to help you identify these critical moments. In the world of IO psychology, we often call these critical incidents. These are the situations that someone might be in a situation if they're joining a company, that we want to display and see how they respond. Now, I just showed you one bit of functionality in the actual builder itself, the ability to branch and do that. But there's also key things around scoring and assessment and providing feedback in real time. And as we actually think about what the end result of all this is, I'm going to turn it back over to Matt so he can share a little bit more on what the participant would see at the end of an experience like this.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, so thank you for that description, Brendan. We have the different, of course, options within the platform itself, which if any of you would like to talk to us separately, we'd be happy to do like a one-on-one web workshop with you where we can kind of walk you through all of that key functionality. But to Brendan's point, after you've created a simulation, after an individual's gone through the experience, what does it look like for them in terms of outcomes? Well, what we're able to do is that immediately after anybody completes the inbox simulation that you create or are ready to use one, they are instantly going to be provided with an individualized feedback report. And this is baked into anything created on the platform. And really, we focus on 4 key areas. Number 1, we want to show their overall performance by percentile against other users that have gone through that version. So if you're creating one for your internal use, we could make a sample group within your company, or you could use one of our ready-to-use versions and have employees compared against the tens of thousands of other individuals that have gone through those simulations already. It's a great barometer to see where their skills are at, kind of like a snapshot in time. Secondly, what we can show them is a developmental index. And really what we're hitting on here is we want to be able to show them how proficient were your responses to a given email or emails, and then how consistent was that proficiency throughout the exercise. And then a component of the onboarding process, which we haven't quite hit on just yet, is we actually do incorporate a self-assessment into this process. Basically, what we do is we'll ask the participants relative to your peers, where do you place yourself on these key skills? Well, I think I'm fairly good at problem solving. I'm going to put myself in the 60th percentile. Or I think I've got a little bit to work on in my communication, put myself in the 40th percentile. And then what's fantastic is that garnering that self-reported information, we're able to compare that directly to the results of the simulation. And what we do is by that comparison, we give them the final 2 boxes you see here on screen. The first one being, we give them a self-awareness level gauge on a scale of 0 to 6, with a higher score indicating that their perceived skills are pretty close to reality, and where a lower score could indicate that they're either, let's say, underrepresenting or overestimating their capabilities, to put it bluntly. But perhaps most importantly, and what's been really ideal for a lot of the clients that we've worked with so far, is actually identifying the skill gaps of that individual, and then also being able to do it at the cohort level too, which we'll show you in just a minute here from the admin side. But if you look at on the right side of the screen, we're plotting out where the self-assessment was placed and where the inbox assessment placed them. So that way, again, we can identify not only their strengths, but identify where do they have the most room to improve going forward. And for a lot of tools out there, this is where it kind of stops. But what we have is an optional individual development plan builder within this platform that will allow the participant to get their results, be provided with developmental tactics by the authors of a ready-to-use simulation or by the author of a custom-made simulation, and then being able to make actionable SMART goals to improve these skills moving forward. And what's typically done from there is that they'll go through that inbox simulation again, say in 3 weeks, 3 months, or maybe even a year's time. And then we're going to be able to show the net change in skill development. So actually showing longitudinal empirical data on the skills of that individual, but also at the cohort level too. So that kind of encapsulates the main part of the participant experience. What I'd like to do now is just briefly showcase to you how we continue that intuitiveness and the ease of use aspects right into the admin dashboard. So the way that it works is that if you administer this to 2 participants, you can essentially either just have them create their own login credentials via a hyperlink where they register and then they complete the assessment and then they provide, and then you'll see those results as they come in directly to you. Or we can bulk register the accounts for you and you simply provide logins to everybody. It really is just that simple. And what you'll see here is you're going to be able to see top level information about the overall group's score by percentile against that general populace. You'll see averages of each of the skill scores. And then of course, you'll be able to go down to the course roster and see individual results. What was an individual's overall score, their developmental index findings, did they complete the assessment? How long did it take them? And if and when they created an individual development plan, which of course you as an administrator would be able to view and even provide feedback on. Because that's very common the way that we see this done in corporate training programs where a facilitator will actually work with the participants to improve that individual development plan to get the most out of it before they go into, say, a post-test, for example. So that's just kind of a quick 30,000 foot view of the admin dashboard. And now what I'd like to do is just briefly talk a little bit about use cases, more so highlighting the key components of what Brendan was mentioning about the learning experience coordinator role preview that we utilize to hire Kelsey. What was great about this is that this was something that I created in roughly 5 hours time. And really my experience in instructional design specifically is fairly limited, but it was still intuitive enough for me to make it work effectively. What was nice about this was that I was able to base it on real emails directly from my inbox, because what more realistic or better example could you get than practical examples that actually happened? And from there, what I was able to do in terms of implementing this was I attached it directly to the job post. And what I was able to do there was I was able to have a very mutually beneficial situation where applicants were able to go through this experience and get exactly the best possible view of what this role would entail before they even sent their application in. And coincidentally enough, I had just as many people that did not apply for the position that did apply for the position that went through that experience. So from my end, it did a great job of being able to filter out the candidates. That way we both knew that this is a good fit, at least to a certain extent going in. And it provided me with some great insights to help me kind of navigate who I wanted to talk to first. How do I structure my interview process, basically? And based on the outputs of the sim from my admin portal, I was able to get some fantastic qualitative information where, in this case, Kelsey described to me how she actually would go about market research. Where does she see the most potential for a platform such as this? Along with quantitative information on how she would handle internal correspondence, external correspondence, market research again, and most importantly, a project management aspect too. And then Brendan, really quick, is there any particular use cases on the right side of the screen that you'd like to highlight here?
Just us to use.
Hang on, Brendan. I think we're getting a little bit of audio issues on your end there. But what I can do in the meantime is I can quickly speak to those. So some of the use cases that we've really seen this utilized for is really the main one's been identifying skill gaps. So really being able to go down from that individual level to the cohort level to even the institutional level to see where is it at. And what we've been able to even use those skill gaps for is that, say we are integrating this into an existing L&D program, helps us as well as the client get inferences as to where do we need to spend more time developing these individuals. Now, additionally, we've also seen this used for certification of intranet tools at different clients, as well as for compliancy training itself in the HR side of things. And what's fantastic that we've seen with some of our ready-to-use versions too, is that we've been able to utilize this for identifying high potentials as well by looking at that percentile-based data within a given cohort. But from here, what I can do is I can kind of walk you through 3 of the options that you have to consider if you'd like to utilize this tool within your institution. First and foremost is that you could use some of our ready-to-use options. So this is choosing some of the ones that we at Capsim have personally created with the help of industry experts and industrial organizational psychologists. What's great about this is that it's ready for immediate implementation. You get that comparative results of the global data, and it's very cost effective too. We only charge $30 per participant to go through any of these versions. Now, the second option is the one that we've been talking about the most during today's presentation, the build your own option. That's the software as a service style platform, develop at your own pace, no fees whatsoever outside of the end user fee of $5 USD. And then finally, we do have this custom by Capsim component, which is more of a partnership, where we'll be able to work directly with you and any other stakeholders to identify what are those critical incidents that Brendan mentioned. What are the key skills and competencies that you want to assess? So basically, we work with you to determine the scope, and then we develop it with the help of our IO psychologists as well as our subject matter experts. And in fact, we've been able to develop these solutions incredibly fast. I'm talking within like 4 to 6 weeks in some cases, with minimal touch points for your team, where we may only have to meet with you for, say, an hour or so to kind of learn what we need to know to start creating the simulation and then get it approved from there. And this could be more of a custom package or where we do it about $100 per user, basically. Now, as a final component, what I'd also like to share is the ready-to-use versions. So say, for instance, you see the potential for this platform, but you'd like to get an idea like, what does this really look like from the participant side? Show me what a great practical use case is from what you've already created. Well, we would be more than happy to work with you to give you access to any of the versions you see on screen here. In fact, the most popular versions that we've seen have been in our soft skills category, around general management and people management, really looking at those key skills like problem solving, communication, and leadership. But we've also had a lot of interest around topics like our ethical decision making one, as well as time management. Can you adequately prioritize your tasks while warding off procrastination? And at the same time, we've been making a lot of different quantitative ones as well. Now, as a lot of these names suggested, these versions, they are very topical in focus, and a lot of them have a combination of both soft skill aspects like managerial decision making, intertwined with more hard skill related topics or more topical components related to what the version is entailing, essentially. So with that, appreciate all of your time to go through this presentation. But at this point, we'd love to take any questions that we have from the crowd and see what you all think, basically.
So this is our opportunity to give Matt and Brendan and Kelsey our feedback. So let's go ahead and open up a mic or two. I've got a couple of questions, but I'll hold back just a little bit here for the audience to maybe see what they're. Oral, did we answer your question as you'd mentioned the question around the content? That was one of the first ones up front there.
Yeah. If not, I'd be happy to expand upon that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, go ahead. I think that's, it's to the point that you've got a lot of content out there and you continue to add with the customers. But I think from your consulting arm, that might be an interesting perspective. What are you seeing people trying to use? I've got a couple of questions around that, but please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's been a variety of different ways that we've worked with corporate clients to create content. If it's not like a straight partnership model where we're kind of working and creating that with our internal team, the two primary methods I would say for how they come up with content is like the example I referred to earlier, where they're actually taking emails directly from their personal experience. The best example I could provide of this is that our human resources CapsimInbox version. This was created by a director of HR at an aeronautics company that he was there for 30 years. And he did the exact same thing that I did. He took emails from his experience, de-identified them, make sure there's no personal information or anything like that, and used that for templates, basically to create his experience. Another thing that we've seen is that, particularly around, say, like certification or compliancy training, it's really just modifying existing content to make it much more experiential and engaging. So, with a lot of your kind of click-through compliancy trainings, it's not really the most fun or not really the most interactive. Well, we simply modify that into this more immersive email experience where it feels much more practical and kind of set in that day in the life, essentially. So, Oral, I hope that gave you some good insight to your question there.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Great.
And then yep.
Kevin, go ahead and ask your question. I think it's a really good one.
Sorry, I was on mute. I know you talked about it, but how do we access this again if I want to test out or make a simulation, see some of the pieces that are already built?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as access to the platform, actually, Brendan or Kelsey, would you mind actually putting in the authoring platform link into the chat here? That'd be the quickest way, and we can also provide that after the fact, of course. And what's going to be a great way for you to be able to test any of the ready-to-use versions we have, we're happy to distribute a survey to everybody where we'd love to get some insight into your own experiential learning practices. And at the bottom of that survey, it'll give you the opportunity to connect directly with us, and we'll give you access to any and all the versions that you'd like to try out yourself. And we'd also be open to doing any pilots with you and a few of your colleagues as well, if that would be of interest.
Very cool. Yeah, I neglected to mention this, my apologies, and you just mentioned that. So we will be sending out, IHRIM will be sending out to all of us in the audience and to those who got the invitations, a survey that has been designed to, in a sense, get your impression of what are you experiencing, would you like to see more of in Capsim Inbox and such? And then to your point, we'll have the link out there for you to take a look at that. Any other question? I like I said, I've got a couple myself, and it might generate even more. So as you mentioned, Matt, as you're talking about putting the link into the Capsim Inbox in a job posting, that's a very, I think, a very interesting and perhaps a very fruitful way in which to use an automated testing thing way up front. And I like the idea that it, to your point about being scalable, a lot of people say, well, yeah, we'll charge you, $100 or $200 per candidate. You're down there at about $5 a person, which is a very useful tool. What are you seeing from the clients that are, as you said, they're kind of getting the candidate experience, and some people are just not even going all the way to application because they've said, I'm just not doing well. This doesn't look like a good match either culturally or skill set wise, whatever.
Yeah.
What are you seeing out there, and are you thinking more and more that people would start using that?
Oh no,
Indeed.
absolutely. And in fact, well, Brendan, if you'd like to take it, I'd be happy to extend from there. But Brendan?
Thanks for the disconnection. My computer seems to be a little struggle to hear on that.
Brendan, it's still a little gargly there on the audio quality. I could feel that one though, no problem. What we have seen is that the individuals that have used this, well, first off, selection has been one of our most common use cases with this, and I think it's been beneficial for organizations primarily because, it saves them we think about turnover. It saves them the time of somebody saying, well, I'm 3 months in this position, and this isn't anything what I thought it'd be at all. So we're looking at trying to solve that problem too. That's been the main bit of feedback, I would say, when it comes to selection and hiring. So.
Yeah, and I would also, my own preference, and this audience has heard me say it many times, I think job descriptions really never capture the essence of what we're trying to get a person to perform once they're here. And so I think that the simulation of the day of in the life of, I am curious, are you finding as a result of that, I guess my question is, who's saving the time? Is it the recruiter, the hiring manager, the applicant, or all three?
I would say it's a bit of all three, to be honest, because thinking about it again from like the applicant side, for example, they're going to be able to get an idea of what this experience looks like, what this potential hiring opportunity could be within like 15 minutes. That's my design was roughly, I think, 15 or so emails, about a minute apiece. So within that time, they can instantly take that next step and say, yes, I'm ready to go ahead and submit my application for this. I'm ready to roll. And then from more the recruiting side, it's definitely going to help them because they're going to see all of that information on the admin dashboard and can assign scoring to it based on how, do they choose the most effective response, but also having that great qualitative data, which we've talked a lot about, like, okay, let's explain your rationale, but think about too from an email etiquette perspective. If you're talking with a fictional version of your supervisor, are you just going to say, yeah, I guess so, this is, I guess, what I would do, or are you going to say, hello, their title, this would be the effective way. You could really get that granular with it and look at both the etiquette as well as the substance too, basically.
Cool. So I'll take that question, extend it one level above, and that is, have you seen your clients using this in executive search and testing, if you will, those that are looking for those executive or senior management positions?
Absolutely, we have. In fact, we have been working with a talent acquisition firm down in Lima, Peru. They've been fantastic. One of our power users, if I could refer to it that way, where they have been creating roughly 5 to 6 mini inboxes that are roughly only 5 to 10 minutes long, and they use multiple ones throughout the process of selecting executive level positions. So and that's a great thing if you think about it from a training company's perspective, because it's very easy to kind of clone these different versions, clone your projects, and make slight iterations for different applications, whether it be externally like this company or internally. So they're able to really kind of use this in a broad way of usage without having to put a lot of additional work in, because they can kind of build on what they've already created. Which is an excellent part too to mention here, Nova, is that anything that you all as authors create in this platform is your intellectual property. Of course, the authoring platform itself is Capsim's, but anything you upload is your intellectual property.
Gotcha. I'm on a roll, but I don't want to keep predominantly taking over the conversation. Any other questions out there, any perspectives anyone would like to? I know there's a couple of quick questions here. Brendan, I see you answered it already. I'm not watching them. I can't multitask. Do you test for multitasking?
I can do that. Yes, absolutely.
Drill that one real quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm looking, I noticed in some of the simulations you talked about things like in the soft skills of ethical decision making, and it strikes me that there's a lot of emphasis these days on diversity and if you will, harassment and all the little keys in there. Are any of your clients using the product from the standpoint of both either giving harassment training in its traditional fashion, which I think is a little boring sometimes, just even watching a video, but some of it's PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint, and then using the product in a sense to test the knowledge? What did I gain out of this process, and how would I now react to certain things?
Absolutely. No, yes, we have in fact. So there's certain components of that we have within some of the quantitative versions, particularly within the human resources as well as the cultural awareness version. But what we have done is more on the private usage side for corporations. We have been working directly with a handful of consultants that are already teaching on those exact topics around DEI, and they're going ahead and making simulations. That way they kind of use that as kind of the lead in to see what would people do under certain circumstances without much information, and then they'll go ahead and have a great post simulation discussion, kind of walking through what were people's thought process from there. So absolutely.
Very cool. I'm seeing so much flexibility and leverage out of this tool that I can't think of anything that I couldn't use it for. And that's a problem in its own right. Yeah, and I see what you're saying there, Brendan. That I hope the rest of the folks saw the answer that the time management inbox does in fact test for multitasking. So that's a good thing.
Yes,
Things like crisis management and so on. How deep and how experiential is that kind of simulation?
So the crisis management is one of my personal favorites, and it's excellent because I got to work with an individual that ran crisis management departments and firms for a great number of years, and also literally wrote the textbook on crisis management. His name is Dr. John Parnell, fantastic individual. And what's great about crisis management is that it's actually a 3-phased inbox, where essentially think of it like checkpoints. And basically what it revolves around is that in section 1, you only have a handful of emails, but really it's all about trying to create your crisis management plan as well as your crisis management team. And what's great is that it kind of compounds through the second and third phase, depending on the amount of expenditures, but depending on the amount of detail you put into creating that plan and team in phase 1, essentially. The section 2 and section 3 issues that you can encounter where things start to rumble a bit in section 2 and you got to handle some minor issues here and there, but then everything kind of just goes off the rails in section 3 based on your preparation in that first section is going to greatly decide on just how well prepared you are for the experiences that come later on in the simulation. So really a fun one there.
I like that. So I'm going to ask a real general question on your roadmap. What, if anything, are you willing to share at this juncture about changes in either the manner in which it's being presented, inclusion of real life people in there, virtual reality, whatever you feel comfortable talking? I'd love to hear where you're looking to take the product.
Oh, 100%. I think there's 3 main areas that I could expand upon here. I think number 1 would be just in terms of general functionality that you can expect from a given inbox. We have the kind of the core components now about like your, of course, inbox itself, sent items, a drive folder, but we want to expand it beyond that. So putting in features like a calendar, for instance, being able to schedule and make even more key decisions in a variety of different ways. That way we can look more closely at things like prioritization or multitasking, as mentioned earlier. I would say the second area that we're looking to improve on is really making it so individuals that want to create their own tools here, not just for internal use within a company, but for public use, that we can give them a model to actually publicly publish their versions, monetize it, and be a part of essentially a inbox marketplace. So kind of think of it as a good parallel to like the Apple App Store, for instance, where you're going to be able to search not just facilitator reviews in the simulation, but participant reviews as well, and watch kind of the cream of the crop rise, out of that, and see, what are the best solutions essentially there. And then finally, and I think the most exciting way, and this is something Brendan and I discuss very often, is that the written responses are in there are fantastic, but there's a lot of development we could do to make that even more substantial, and particularly around actually putting in machine learning and artificial intelligence to really take it to the next level, to lessen the burden even further on facilitators, where you're not evaluating, say, 500 different qualitative, written responses. We can do some of that work for you by processing that, and being able to kind of make that a little bit more streamlined, essentially. So those are kind of the three areas I say where they're top of mind for us here at Capsim.
And I guarantee you that as a result of that, we would love to invite you back when you get to some new versions of this. I think I'm personally intrigued. I think it's a very, very cool product. It's got some definite legs on it, and I think that we're hoping. Any other questions from the group, or any feedback, any direct feedback? Certainly, Matt and Brendan and Kelsey would love to hear your impressions. Although we will be sending that survey out to get those impressions as well. All righty. Well, if you don't mind, then we'll kind of bore the audience for the last pieces here, just for a moment, for me speaking through those last IHRIM slides would be great. So for those of you in the audience who are not familiar with IHRIM, I am an IHRIM member. I'm sitting on the board. I've been an IHRIM member for years and years and years. And I would personally say that my career has been based on my connections and my exposure to the world of IHRIM. Many of the people I know, many people potentially in my client base, as well as my network, are people that are from the IHRIM world. And so if you're looking for a way to connect with HR technology, which is still very hot, practitioner either being very, very deep, or just a professional who wants to know a little bit more about tech, this is the organization to be at. So if you'd go to the next slide, please. Okay, and I'll let it speak for itself, but I mentioned the HRIP. If you want a career in HR technology, you too can be like me. That's probably not a good idea. But you could have an HRIP behind your name. It is a very singularly unique certification in the HR technology space. And I'm very proud to wear it around. It's on my LinkedIn profile for a reason. And it really denotes a fair amount of both knowledge, deep knowledge on a number of different fronts and that. I'm going to come back to a question I forgot to ask, but we'll go to the next slide and we'll call that a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you see, please come out to the IHRIM site, browse around. We have a lot. We've been offering webinars for many sessions, all free to just showing up. So again, as you see here in this Technology Review Council as well, it's just a very good place to learn. I didn't see project management on your list of simulations, and yet it strikes me that would be an exceedingly, it's a little bit of crisis management slash learning and how to assess where you are, where are the options, and how do I alter the critical path. Have you got some examples or clients that are doing that as well?
Oh, absolutely. We got a couple of private versions in development that are looking at that specifically. And while we don't have a project management version in title, we do have several simulations that do focus on that, whether it be by a different name or as one of the key skills or competencies they are assessing. But yes, that is something we focus on within these sims.
Very cool. Very cool. I have a feeling maybe IHRIM will come back and talk to you about this as well.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, Nov. And also thank you to IHRIM as well as Nov and Kevin for allowing us this opportunity to present the CapsimInbox authoring platform to you all. Again, we'd be more than happy to give access to any of these solutions, to let you try them out, or to talk with you directly to see if this would be a good solution for your company. So
very cool. Well, again, thank you to the three of you. Thank you, audience, for joining us. Keep your eyes open. We've got many more of these TRC IHRIM presentations coming up, and we'll see you in the near future. Again, thank you much.
Excellent. Thank you all.